Assalamu alaikum students, welcome back to another video. Today we will be solving Cambridge IGCSE Physics Paper 4 Variant 42 of October-November 2021. Question 1. Figure 1.1 shows a space rocket accelerating away from a launch pad. Figure 1.2 is a speed time graph for the first 30 seconds of the rocket's flight. Describe how the acceleration of the rocket changes between time 10 seconds and time 30 seconds. So from this point till this point we can see that the speed is increasing. So this tells us that acceleration also increases. By drawing a tangent to the graph, determine the acceleration of the rocket at time 25 seconds. So at time 25 seconds, we will go and draw a tangent. So at this point, so we will draw a tangent and we can take any 2 points from the tangent to calculate the acceleration. So you can take any 2 points. I'm gonna take this point, which is 26, 27, 28, 27.5 and 1500. So 1 point you have 27.5 and 1500. And you can take any other point. You can also take the point itself at 25. So it is 25 and this value would be 1350. So 25 and 1350. So using these two values from the tangent we can calculate. So using the formula of gradient, we can use 1500 minus 1350 over 27.5 minus 25. So just plug this in your calculator. 1500 minus 1350 over 27.5 minus 25. So answer you get 60 meters per second squared. Determine the distance traveled by the rocket between time 0 and time 10 seconds. So we have a speed time graph and we know that the area under the graph would give us the distance. So distance between time 0 and 10. So we can see that this is a triangle with base 10 and height is 400. So we can use the formula for triangle, half base into height. Base is 10, height is 400. So the answer comes out to be 2000 meters. State Hooke's law. So Hooke's law states that the acceleration extension is directly proportional to the load. Extension directly proportional to load, given that the limit of proportionality is not reached. So you will also have to mention that. Figure 2.1 shows the extension load graph for a spring. On figure 2.1, mark and label the region where the spring obeys Hooke's law. So the spring obeys Hooke's law till the point the limit of proportionality is reached. So we can see that approximately till this point it obeys the Hooke's law. Calculate the spring constant K. So here we can use the formula F is equals to Kx So make make k the subject, f over x is equals to k. You can take any value from the graph. I'm gonna take this value here, 10, and it corresponds to so we have to see which value is here at this point. This should be approximately 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70. This is 70 millimeters at when the load is 10. So 10 over 70. So we have to convert the millimeters into meters, because the SI unit for any sort of distance is meters. So 70 millimeters would become 0.07 meters. When you calculate this, you will get your answer as rounded off 140 newtons per meter. The original length of the spring is 120 millimeters. Calculate the length of the spring when a load of 8.5 newtons is applied to the spring. So once again you will use the formula F is equals to kx. Force is 8.5. Extension we have to calculate, and k is 140. So 8.5 divided by 140 would give us 0.06. So we'll convert this into millimeters. So 0.06 meters would be 60 millimeters. So this is the extension. We have to calculate the length. So we'll add this to the original length. So 120 plus 160 would give you 180 millimeters. The weight of an object is 4 newtons on a planet with the acceleration of free fall is 8.7 meters per second squared. Calculate the mass of the object. So we have the formula W is equals to mg. Mass we have to calculate, weight is 4, gravitational field strength is 8.7. So just simply plug this in your calculator and your answer comes out to be 0.46 kilograms. Question 3. Figure 3.1 shows a collision at very low speed between two cars traveling along a straight road. Car B of mass 800 grams is moving at 2 meters per second and collides with car A of mass 1000 kilograms, which is stationary. After the collision, both cars travel in the same direction as the initial direction of car B. After the collision, car A moves at 1.3 meters per second. Show that the speed of car B after the collision is approximately 0.4 meters per second. So here we will use the principle of conservation of momentum, which says that the total momentum of the system before must be equal to the total momentum of the system after the collision. So total momentum before, since car A is stationary, it has 0 momentum. So car B's momentum is 800 times 2, which is 1600. First let's state that before must be equals to after. So total momentum before is 1600. This is due to car B. Car A has 0 momentum since it is stationary, and it should be equal to the total momentum after. So the total momentum of car A after the collision is 1000 times 1.3, so 1300 plus the momentum of car B, which would be 800 times the speed, which will take as x. So we have 300 over 800 is equals to x. So we get 0.375, which rounded off is 0.4, which we had to show. Calculate the impulse exerted by car A on car B. So the impulse is basically the change in momentum, and the change in momentum which is exerted by car A on car B is 1300 Newton seconds. State the impulse exerted by car B on car A. So we know that every action has an opposite and equal reaction, so it would be the same for car B as well. Question 4. A power station uses wind energy to generate electricity. State and explain whether this method of generating electricity is renewable. So yes, it is renewable. And why is that? Because wind is always there. It is not something that will that will eventually finish. It will always be there. It won't run out. State two energy resources that do not have the sun as their source. So you can write any two, like nuclear and tidal. These two sources do not use the sun. For each energy resource, state the form of energy stored in. So fossil fuels have chemical energy, and water behind hydroelectric dams have gravitational potential since they are stored at a certain height. Hence why they have gravitational potential energy. A thermocouple thermometer is used to determine the temperature difference between a mixture of ice and water and liquid mercury at approximately 600 Celsius. Complete figure 5.1 with a label diagram to show how the thermocouple thermometer can be used in this way. So we know the thermocouple thermometer has two wires. And they are of different materials, and they are connected to a galvanometer which gives us the readings. Let's call it G, and there is a junction here. This is how they are connected. State two other physical properties that can be used to measure temperature. So we can use the expansion of the liquid like we use in a normal thermometer. Liquid in glass thermometer we use. So, and that depends on the expansion of liquid. So when it is heated, the liquid expands and hence we get a reading. And there is also an electrical thermometer which uses electrical resistance. State two benefits of using a thermocouple thermometer instead of a liquid in glass thermometer. So a thermocouple thermometer can measure much higher temperatures as compared to in glass thermometer. And it can also measure rapidly varying temperatures. Question 6. Figure 6.1 shows particles of a material in which a sound wave is traveling. On figure 6.1, mark a center of a compression with the letter C. So you know a compression is where all the particles are very close together. So this is a compression. And a rarefaction is when all the particles are very further apart. This is a rarefaction. And wavelength is the distance between two compressions or two rarefactions. So this is your wavelength. So equal one value from the list, which is the speed of sound and water. So this is a value that you should recall, you should be able to memorize, and it is 1500 meters per second. The wavelength of a sound wave in water is 12 centimeters. Calculate the frequency of this sound wave using a value from V. So we have the formula V is equals to F lambda. The speed is 1500. Frequency we have to calculate, and wavelength is 12 centimeters. So you'll have to convert this into meters first. So it would be 0.12. So just plug this in your calculators and you'll get your answer as 12,500 hertz. State and explain whether the sound in C is ultrasound. So no, not ultrasound, because the range of ultrasound frequencies is from 20 hertz till 20,000. No, wait. Ultrasound are those waves which have frequency greater than 20,000, but this is 12,500, so this is not greater than 20,000 hertz, hence it is not ultrasound. Figure 7.1 shows a ray of light approaching face AB of a glass prism of the refractive index 1.5. On figure 7.1, accurately draw the path of the ray within the prism from face AB to face AC. You will need to make a measurement from figure 7.1 and carry out a calculation. Okay, so they have given us the refractive index. We have the formula N is equals to sine I over sine R. We have to basically calculate this the refracted angle so that we can complete the path. But the first thing you have to do will be to make a normal and measure this angle. This would be your incident angle, and using a protractor, when you measure this, it should be 60 degrees. So you are given the refractive index and you also know the incident angle, so you can calculate the refracted angle. So 1.5 is equals to sine 60 over sine R. So just solve for R, and your refracted angle would come out to be 35 degrees. So 35 degrees, it will be something like this. And then you have to complete the ray till AC. Determine the angle of incidence of this ray when it strikes face AC. So once again you will have to make a normal like this, and you have to calculate this angle. This angle, this small little angle. So using your protractor, this will come out to be 10 degrees. Without further measurement or calculation, sketch on figure 7.1 the approximate path of the ray after passing through the face AC. So we know that it is traveling from a denser medium to less dense, so it will move away from the normal. It will move something like this. Figure 7.2 shows a ray of light traveling within an optical fiber. Complete the path of the ray of light to the left hand end of the fiber. So we know that inside an optical fiber, total internal reflection occurs. So you have to complete this path using total internal reflection. And total internal reflection, these angles are the same. So be careful with that. Name the process. This process is total internal reflection. Question 8. Figure 8.1 shows a conducting object A initially uncharged held on an insulating stand. The positively charged rod B is brought close to object A. On figure 8.1, draw a distribution of charges on object A. So if you bring closer a positively charged rod, so the negative charges will accumulate on one side and the positive charges will be on the other side. And be careful, you will have to draw the same amount of charges. So if you're drawing 5 negative charges, you will draw 5 positive charges as well. A wire is connected from object A to earth. State and explain any movement of charge. So we know that when we earth any object, negative charges flow from earth to the object. And why is that? It is because electrons flow to balance excess of positive charge on the object. So the explanation is that in order to balance excess positive charge on the object. Part B. There is a current in a wire of 0.65 milliamperes for 2.2 minutes. Calculate the charge that flows. So we have the formula Q is equals to IT. We have to calculate the charge Q. I is your current, which is 0.65 milliamperes. So you'll have to convert it first. And minutes should be in, time should be in seconds. So 2.2 times 60. So just plug this in your calculator and your answer will be 0.086 coulombs. Question 9. Figure 9.1 shows a cell of electromotive force 1.5 volts and a battery of EMF 6 volts connected in series. Calculate the combined EMF. So combined EMF, you will just add their EMFs, which would become 7.5 volts. The combined resistance of the three resistors shown in figure 9.2 is 4.4 ohms. Calculate the resistance of resistor R. So the total resistance of this complete combination is 4.4 and we have to calculate for R. So first let's calculate the resistance of these two. So 1 upon 2 plus 1 upon 3. Since they are in parallel, this is the formula for parallel. So we have 5 over 6, which gives us RT as 1.2. So if these two have a combined resistance of 1.2 and the total is 4.4, so R must have 4.4 minus 1.2. This will give us 3.2 ohms. The current I in figure 9.2 is 0.94 amperes. Calculate the potential difference across the combination of resistors. So we have the formula V is equals to current times resistance. We have to calculate V, potential difference. Current we have 0.94 and total combined resistance is 4.4. So using your calculator, you get your answer as 4.1 volts. Question 10. You can skip the first two parts because they are not part of the syllabus anymore. Let's do part C. An electrical device has a metal case. Explain the benefit of earthing the metal case. So earthing would prevent electrocution in the case that the live wire touches the metal case. So if So we know that the live wire has current. So if it touches the metal case, the metal case would also contain current, and then it can be harmful for anyone who touches the metal case. So earthing allows, it basically prevents electrocution, and it prevents the metal case from becoming live. Part D, explain how a fuse protects a circuit. So we know that whenever the current gets too high, the fuse melts and it basically breaks the circuit. So it stops the flow of current. So fuse melts. Part 2, the current in an electric kettle connected to the main through a fuse is 10 amperes. Fuses with the following ratings are available. Circle the correct fuse rating for this appliance and explain your answer. So the function of a fuse is to melt when the current gets too high. So if an electric kettle should be working at 10 amperes, so the fuse should be more than 10 amperes. So when the current gets more than 10 amperes, the fuse should melt. So which value would be suitable? It would be 13 amperes. And this is because the fuse rating should be slightly greater than the appliance or whatever object it is connected to. Question 11, which is the last question. Describe the composition and structure of a neutral atom of beryllium-8 which has a proton number of 4 and a nucleon number of 8. So since it is an atom, we know that it will have small nucleus concentrated at the center and surrounded by electrons. The electrons are also in orbit. And proton number, it will have 4 protons, and you know that proton and electron number is the same, so 4 protons, 4 electrons and 4 neutrons. A radioactive isotope decays by beta emission to form an isotope of barium with nucleon number 135. Use data from table 11.1 to write down the nuclear equation for this decay. So the substance that is being formed is barium after a beta emission. So on the right you have barium, which has a proton number of 56, nucleon number is 135. We know that when a beta emission occurs, there is, so a beta emission is of this nature. -1 proton number. So that means that on the left there must be a substance with 1 less proton number as compared to barium. So that would be cesium. So this is the complete nuclear equation. So that brings us to the end of our paper. I hope you liked this video, and if you did, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and like always, I will see you later.